One of our student is still on the road. She thinks she might arrive by 2:45, so I'm just gonna let Dr. Turner go first and then continue. As everybody stretches their legs for just a moment, we're going to get started shortly. We're just going to have our panelists come to the forefront. I am Dr. Wendy Green. I am not Dr. Mason Simpson, and I will be moderating with Dr. Martin this session. It is my pleasure, on behalf of the DEI Committee, to welcome the American College of Surgeons here today to give us some updates, as well as for our DEI Symposium from our residents and students who will be talking about a culture of safety from the medical student and resident trainee perspectives. Next slide, please. Oh, got it here. Thank you. We would like to give our acknowledgements to not only our panelists, but as well as our DEI committee and our moderators and panelists. I'm Dr. Wendy Green. I'm a professor of surgery and the first African-American female professor of surgery at Emory. I'm part of the Emory University School of Medicine and the director of acute and critical care surgery. And those are my social media contacts. We're going to try to get into that. We also have my co-moderator, Dr. Colin Martin from UAB. He's a pediatric surgeon from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. He's an associate professor and vice chair for DEI at UAB. On our way, we have our medical student, Jasmine Eaton. She's gotten, unfortunately, delayed in some traffic from Atlanta, but she's a fourth-year MD, PhD candidate, and those are her social media hashtags. We have Gloria Sannon. She is a PGY4 in her research year at Wake Forest, and she's interested in vascular surgery. We also have Kay Ann Simmons, and she is representing our LGBTQ cisgender population. She is a PGY2 LSU General Surgery. We have Jerison Williams from a PGY4, who is a T32 NIH postdoctoral research fellow at Emory University, and he's interested in MIS and bariatrics. And last but not least, we have Angeles Vasquez Perez, who's a fourth-year surgical resident at LSU in New Orleans, and she's interested in pursuing the breast surgical oncology program. So during this opportunity, we're going to bring some, Colin's going to bring some words to us kind of about the background of the culture of safety that we're trying to learn from our residents and trainees, and how we might be able to incorporate some of the experiences that they have had from their perspectives of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Colin?
It's a pleasure to be here, and really thank you for the opportunity, both from the society, Dr. Stewart, Dr. Green, for inviting me It's an honor to be here. I am a vice chair for diversity, equity, inclusion at UAB. And as a result, I've served on many DEI panels. This is the first one I've had an opportunity to moderate, where we have a panel full of residents and learners. Looking out into the audience, we have cancer service line directors, we have chairs, we have deans, we have vice chairs, division chiefs. And we're all, I guess, leaders in American surgery, but also gatekeepers into surgery. And we have a say who gets into our specialty. I hope that after this session, we'll consider the attributes of our panel: leadership, transparency, courage, maybe some of these panel members, as we think about those discussions and those decisions. So a few ground rules. We have a few prepared questions, but this is a great audience and would love to also have questions from the audience. I'll ask the panelists just to, again, just very briefly reintroduce themselves and their expertise and that they bring to the panel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gloria Sandin. I am a general surgery resident at Wake Forest, currently on med research here. And I was born in Colombia, born and raised. I moved to the US, did undergrad in Georgia University, Pittsburgh for medical school. And now I am in Winston-Salem doing my general surgery training.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I would like to thank the Surgical Congress for giving us the opportunity to share our perspective and our voices. My name is Jerrison Williams. I'm a fourth-year general surgery resident at Emory University. I'm currently in Dr. Craig Coopersmith's lab studying sepsis and immunology. And one of the many opportunities I've had as a surgery resident is to build what we call a surgical equity curriculum for the residents at Emory, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit later on the panel. But it's given me the unique opportunity to kind of delve into what ways we can make surgical training and education more equitable for all residents that are involved. And then that's kind of what sparked my interest here in DEI.
Good afternoon. My name is Angelis Vasquez, and I give thanks for this great opportunity in speaking here in the DEI panel. I want to also thank our LSU for supporting us in this. And I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I did my undergrad and med school there, and now I'm working at LSU. I am applying for breast surgical oncology fellowship now, and I'm here representing as a proud Latino and female general surgery resident. I am an advocate for representing minorities in healthcare. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Hi, I'm Kayanne Simmons. I go to LSU General Surgery. I'm a PGY2. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here representing the LGBTQ community as a cisgender lesbian. Really honored to be here. When I was in medical school in Alabama, we started something called MedPride and Allies that helped facilitate healthcare resources to members of the LGBTQ community. And that's something that I look forward to trying to bring to New Orleans as well.
Thank you. The first question, we heard from our panelists that there are many who are in training and are going to be considering faculty opportunities as well as fellowship opportunities. So for the panelists, when you're looking at a position, how do you determine if an organization or department will provide a culture of safety as it relates to DEI?
I can answer that. I think when you're starting to look at all these different programs, starting by having this conversation with the patient, the people that you're interviewing with, especially with the leadership, just you can look at the proportion of attending that are from underrepresented minorities as well as the residents. And even if it's not diverse, or even if you don't see people that you identify or have the same background as you, as long as this is something where you have an open conversation with the leadership and it's something that they acknowledge and they're actually seeking to change, I think that can be pretty telling as to like if whether or not that's going to be a good place for you and it's diverse enough for you.
Yeah, I guess I can follow up. I think creating a culture or potentially even changing a culture is an active sport, and it's not a passive game. And so, on the interview trail, when the programs are interviewing you and you're interviewing those programs, there are things that you look for them to say and for things that you look for them to do to make sure that that you'll be supported at the institution, right? So if an institution has a history of not necessarily being historically inclusive to underrepresented minorities, you do look for people to say, here, we will support you. We'll make sure you have what you need to succeed and excel in our program. Or what do you need to succeed and excel in our program? What are your interests, and who can I partner you with to make sure you have the right mentorship and the adequate tools to succeed? Because there's one thing to bring someone into your residency program. There's another thing to bring someone into your residency program. They excel, do exceptionally well, and are able to graduate your residency program and be within good standing within the surgical community. And I think that's the end goal, not necessarily the first goal, which is just bringing someone into the program.
Yeah, I
Yes.
definitely agree with everything that everyone just said. I think for me also, there are some diversity grants that can go for away rotations for fourth-year medical students. I know whenever I was applying for away rotations, this was right before COVID, I was looking into those things just to see if the program even had them. I think that's a really good way to filter in diversity into residency programs. Just an idea. And then, like they said, just having the language of inclusivity. I know LSU was very open with me about me being gay and coming there, and they made a point to try to tell me that I would be included. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to match there in the first place. And I think the more programs that do that, obviously the better.
Yeah, I think part of it is looking at what are they doing in order to include minorities and diversity in their program, and what toolkit does the program offer as part of mentorship for you?
Very well. And just for our panelists, if we can just speak directly into the mic so everyone can hear us in the back of the room. Thank you for those comments. The next question is, certainly we've all either witnessed.
One thing before we move on. So what I heard was that there are great opportunities for us who are looking for residents and students to come into our programs as and fellows, that we need to create an environment of inclusivity that they can actually see. So that is that your website development, how you have opportunities for fellowship programs for people to come and train at your organization, come and do visiting opportunities at your organization. And is there something that is very visible, and can people ask you questions about their particular group and find out where do you stand on this and what have you done? So it's not just you telling them, but you need to be able to demonstrate that that's actually going on. And then they will check when they come to visit to see, is that true or not? And they'll look at your website to be able to see, is that true or not? How well displayed are you showing your support for their particular group?
Thank you for that comment. So many of us either have witnessed or heard about aggressions, microaggressions, macroaggressions at our institutions that create a very toxic and challenging work environment. Perhaps the panelists can talk about some ways to protect themselves if they find themselves to be in an environment where it can be hostile.
Yeah, I thought this was a very interesting question, because people experience things on the interpersonal level, and how they respond to things can vary based on their life experiences and such. And I think one of the ways that you prevent your residents from having a negative experience, whoever they may be, is that you have a culture of resident protection. So I know at Emory, it's always been the case. We've always had the sense of resident tribalism, where the more senior residents are going to protect the junior residents, whether that be from clinical decisions, whether that be from, attendings being upset from time to time if certain labs weren't ordered or checked and things like that. And the same occurs when you talk about microaggressions and things that can be along the racial or gender or sexual orientation type lines. And so I think that once you have a culture that says we support you no matter what, and we remove, all these barriers, these societal ills, and these barriers that we've kind of set up, that you would have a culture of residents that are comfortable coming to their senior residents, that are comfortable coming to their attendings, are comfortable coming to their program director and saying that these things are happening and that they'll be protected, and change will happen when they do that, when they speak up.
I think, the culture basically shapes the clinician. It shapes the staff. It's changed the perception of everyone, right? And it influences one's motivation. So it's important in every aspect, like you has mentioned. I think mentors are very important. And I think in our institution, for example, we have one of our attendings, Dr. Gidre. She gives a talk about microaggression, and she really encourages our attendings to present the residents as equals when we're looking at in front of the patient bedside and the patient. Like, these are our residents, and they are here, part of the team, and that kind of creates an equal plane for all. Doesn't matter what race, doesn't matter what gender, doesn't matter what level even. These are all of our residents, and we are all part of the team, and they're here to help you. And that's kind of like how the attending presents us to the patients. So I think that's kind of important.
I couldn't agree more. I think, yes, just creating an environment where our attendings stand up for us, even when there's not students in the room. It comes top down with talks with faculty, with administration and things like that, where we just create this environment where I am not going to say or not even say anything if someone's saying something that's a microaggression. If you are an ally, you need to stand up for people, even when that person may or may not be there.
So what I heard about the microaggressions, if you think of the microaggressions like little bee stings, there are multiple bites throughout the day. One little bite doesn't bother you, but once you get about 1,000 of them throughout the day, you're about done with the microaggressions. And one thing we have to be sensitive about is that we have to ask the person who the aggression is being directed towards, whether they are okay with you stepping in. There's sometimes a sense of salvation coming to rescue, and some person may not want to stand up at that time for that particular issue because they've been dealing with different issues all day, and this one may need to roll off their back and not be addressed at this time. So being sensitive, and we as allies for each other, we need to figure out and ask, is this something that you want me to stand up for, to talk up about on your behalf or not? And if the person gives you the go ahead, then feel free to do it, but at least give them the recognition and the opportunity to combat the narrative and say whether it is appropriate or not.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Many of our organizations over the last few years have been asked to make statements as it relates to social justice issues. I'm sure this organization has, departments have. And I'd like to hear the panelists' comments when our organizations make these statements. How do you vet it? How do you assess its validity, and is it actionable? I'd like to start with Jasmine, our panelist who just started. If you could introduce yourself and perhaps start that conversation.
Thank you so much for opening that up, and good afternoon. My name is Jasmine Eatman. I am a fourth year MD PhD candidate at Emory University in Atlanta. I appreciate that question, and the fact that it's part of the dialogue, I believe, is important. I think it's timely. We've seen many statements come out on various issues. Some are substantive, some are not. And as a student, particularly as a student who is kind of straddling the clinical world and the world of research where we really think, I think very critically. And sometimes it's like, wow, we're thinking a lot and very deeply about certain issues when I'm used to thinking in a more procedural or systematic way. But I think that what we would do well to do is when we're coming out with statements, thinking about what are the implications for those who are going to be impacted by them, one. And two, how does it contribute to the culture that or the environment that we want to set up? The reason that I came up on the stage late is because my car actually the engine light came on and it turns out that it had a coolant issue and I had to sit on the side of the road for an hour in order to let it cool down before I opened the coolant. And I think that it's an interesting analogy for our institutions, right? If the thermostat is hot, sometimes you got to hold on and assess, even if you're late, even if you're not sure how you're going to get where you're going, making sure that you're not opening things up prematurely where you lose control of a situation or create more hurt and more pain than would really have been otherwise by trying to do the right thing but doing it out of order and out of turn. So I think that those would be my thoughts on that question.
I don't have anything else to add on that statement. I could feel the heat, and you can imagine if you take off the cap too soon, you will get burned and there'll be collateral damage. So, let it cool off sometimes, take a moment, and also use your resources. You have a number of organizations, and hopefully you have an advisory council that is diverse enough of the people who represent that population that you could pull on and say, can you take a look at what I'm about to say? Sometimes people will put forward addresses and statements that may not, if they had allowed someone else to take a look at that before they put it forward and it went viral, they may not have had so much backlash. Maybe their thoughts and what they were trying to say may have been received better if they just had allowed another person to take a look at it and say, I'm talking to your group. I'm talking to people who and I want to make sure I'm sensitive about this. Can you look at this? We aren't perfect. We're growing in this. We're all learning to talk and learn this DEI language, and we want to be sensitive. So let's do that. Let's use our resources. Let's ask questions. Let's communicate. Let's have difficult conversations.
And this is a great time. If anyone in the audience has questions or thoughts, please come to the microphone. Dr. Williams is coming to the microphone. I'll make a comment and let Dr. Williams make a comment, and then we'll turn to the panel. So Dr. Williams was one of my first mentors as a medical student. And so at Wayne State University, Dr. Williams was a Black male surgeon, and I was a Black male medical student. We had a lot of commonalities. And the question I'll have for the panel, and we'll maybe have the panel answer this question and then Dr. Williams can comment. The question is finding mentors. Often we're at organizations where we may not have a mentor that thinks like us, looks like us, believes the way we do. And how have you navigated that, finding mentors, perhaps when you may be one of the only X or Y in the room? So maybe we'll let our panelists just chat with that, and then Dr. Williams will have your comments after that.
So I believe, a mentor and mentee relationship is a two-way street. And of course, it takes the initiative upon the mentee more often than not to seek out that mentor and find that person. And I think it's important for the mentee to find some type of commonality between the two persons and a reason for this person to want to see you do well. That being said, it's easier when you have someone who has a shared background, shared history, shared culture, but it doesn't make it impossible if that's not the case. And so, I think for myself, I know that a love for surgery, a love for history, a love for taking care of patients is that commonality that I'm able to find between my mentors and myself. And I use that. And I would hope that since I don't share some of those same, cultural things with my mentors, that they still would want to invest in to the degree of sponsorship in me and see that I do well. And I think that's been the case. That's what I've experienced at my institution. But I think, in cases where you don't necessarily have, a demographic that reflects your own, that you have to find commonalities elsewhere. And when it comes to surgery residents, we love surgery. We love taking care of patients. It's always easy to start there and go from there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think sometimes even though you have a mentor that can have the same background as you, not necessarily that means that that's going to be the best mentor, obviously. It's finding someone that basically supports you on every step of the way and that cares about you enough to push you to keep striving and helping you achieve your goal. So I would say one of my mentors here is Dr. Smith. She's female trauma surgeon, and she really, really pushes me. I send her an email, she sends me an email back. And I'm really grateful for that. So
If I could, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to add to that, sometimes the connection that you have with that person is more important than being from the same background. And the other thing to remember as well is that you don't have to have one mentor that fits everything for you, does everything that you need. You can think of them as coaches too. Like you can have a mentor that is going to be a research mentor, someone who's just going to help you navigate interviews, someone who's going to help you through clinical rotations. And so just because you don't have someone who looks like you or is from the same background as you might be able to have a really great connection with someone just because they're really engaged in a specific area that you're going to go into.
I just want to add, I'm sorry, Jeff, if I took over. I'll let you go first.
Okay, sounds good. I also, I'd like to say that I support, the notion that it's important to create mentorship relationships with those of all backgrounds. And even if they may not look like you, I will say I cherish the mentorship relationships and value them that I have with those who do look like me and who are able to kind of relate to my experiences in a unique way. Although those aren't my only mentors, those mentors are the ones who I believe I feel safe going to. I feel supported in a way that I know adds longevity realistically to my career. And I think what's important is what I will say is one of the faculty at my institution, Dr. Tracy Henry, she created an organization to connect people that look like you, to connect you with faculty who look like you. And I think that's been a really, really significant part of my success. Just in 1959, and I know because I have the letter hanging above my desk, Emory University wrote a rejection letter to Dr. Marion Hood on the basis of his race. And 1959 was but a generation ago. And so I think it's important to note that although you don't have to have anyone who, even one mentor who looks like you or comes from the same background, it is life-changing for many underrepresented students, particularly in the medical school phase, which I can speak to. So,
yeah. And once again, I think we provide a very unique perspective because we're millennials and we're trainees, and so we're looking at this thing with a lot less experience than most of the folks here in this audience. But I would say, talking to my peers, folks who come from majority backgrounds, they don't have a ton of mentors themselves, and so the folks who come from more diverse backgrounds, I know if folks from majority backgrounds are struggling to find mentors or haven't actively reached out to folks, that folks from more diverse backgrounds probably don't have the number of mentors that they need to be successful within surgery. And so knowing that you have identifying people within your residency programs and making sure that they're paired with somebody, that someone's talking to them, that someone is following up and monitoring what they're doing with their career, what research they're participating in, how are they performing on AppSite and different standardized tests that they need to take, making sure that you're intentional about making sure that they have those mentors. Because I think that we residents do ourselves a disservice often by not reaching out to faculty in the first place. But then I think diverse residents probably have it even harder because you don't have the ease of the tribalism of we come from the same place or we come from the same cultures that create those bonds more easily.
Dr. Williams.
Yeah, I'll answer the question as well. Dr. Charles Lucas and Dr. Anna Ledgerwood look nothing like me. We could be seen in any way as similar, but when it came time to take care of surgical patients and understand surgical disease and how it moves in the human body and how do we remediate it as surgeons, we are identical. And so I would reaffirm your assessment of how do you proceed, how do you go about getting mentors in a surgical environment. My question is simply this. I like the statement that Wendy made. We're not perfect. We are learning this. So I would like you guys to tell us how you create the space in your institution, in your department, for people to make mistakes and for us to continue to learn from those mistakes without necessarily pursuing one road or the other, but really having and engaging into the deeper conversation, which allows for the more sustainable transformation. Thank you, Colin.
I can start off with that for a recent example. Our organization had on the university-wide, the healthcare side, a opportunity where those who were interested in gathering and having a collaborative, safe discussion from different perspectives about topics that they could have them and ask questions. One question came up trying to find out how someone could up in a nice manner. It wasn't an occurrence. Words matter. George Floyd was murdered. And the person then wrote back in the chat and said, thank you for bringing it back in a way that I could understand it, that words mattered, and that it mattered to you, and that they were respectful and received it in a good way. So creating safe spaces where people can have genuine conversations and ask, do you like to be called Black? Do you like to be called African-American? What do your people think? Well, my people think lots of things. Some people like to be called Black. Some people like to be called African-American. You're going to have to ask that person who you're talking to, because they may be offended or not offended by it. And so I can't speak for the entire race, but I can help direct you maybe to have a conversation with the person that you're talking about. What's your preferred pronoun? Well, if we all just say what our preferred pronouns is, nobody has to ask what your preferred pronoun is. You just put it up on your little Zoom chat, rename yourself, and then everybody knows what you want to be called. You make it normative. So having conversations, organizations, creating spaces where you can feel comfortable asking your colleague a question that you might feel a little backlash on, but you really kind of want to know, and you don't know how to ask it. We have to make opportunities for that to happen.
Would any of the panelists want to also respond to that question?
I think it's a very interesting question. I think that really requires a strong and visible commitment from the leadership to creating this culture of safety and diversity that Dr. Green was mentioning, encouraging having an environment that is inclusive and values the unique perspectives and experiences of everyone in the team and all healthcare workers, regardless of their role in the team. And our leadership has done a really great job in this area. We have focused on creating an environment where there's open communication, where we're able to discuss barriers to a more diverse culture. And in certain areas, there has been a clear effort to make a workforce that is more diverse, as well as creating this culture of safety that is supportive, inclusive, and empowering for all of us to be able to speak up regardless of our background or experience.
I think Dr. Williams, you were speaking of a culture of having grace with people. And so though I am an underrepresented minority, I'm not, I don't represent every group that is underrepresented in medicine, right? And so I still have the societal biases that, that are accustomed to where I'm from and things like that. And those are things that I have to work through on a day-to-day basis and get better at. And so, you have to have some grace and understanding with people who don't come from the same backgrounds that you come from, and understand that they are learning too, and help them with that learning. And so a lot of the things that we've done, some of our DEI initiatives, one of the first things that I noticed was a lot of the surgical equity stuff that we were doing was anti-Black racism. Why? Because I was invested in anti-Black racism as a Black man. However, there's a ton of other things that we weren't necessarily paying attention towards at first, which was, transgender patients, incarcerated patients, LGBTQ rights, things like that, that we start to incorporate, right? Things that I initially had been uncomfortable speaking about because I didn't know a lot about, but I educated myself on these topics, and the folks that helped me educate myself on these topics had grace with me when I made mistakes, when I misgendered folks, or when I used the wrong pronouns. There was some grace there, and there wasn't instant condemnation saying that you're not tolerant and things like that. And so I think that as long as you create an environment, a space that you're able to do that, then you're going to move forward as an institution.
I think that was very well put. Thank you. I agree. I kind of want to echo just some that words do matter, and grace and patience is what it's going to take. We need to have patience with each other and just the compassion to care for what other people think. And that's really the bottom line of what we're trying to do here and every day.
Dr. Edwards.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. So this is a very difficult space, and these are difficult topics to talk about. So I do want to applaud all of you for your leadership and your courage to sit on the stage and have the conversation, with us. I think one of the things, or two of the things that I tend to find that are missing from the conversation, whether we're talking about diversity, inclusion, equity, cultural safety, are metrics and accountability. So can you guys speak to that either from a personal perspective, from your institutional perspective, or even from a national perspective? Ultimately, you have to have some guidance in terms of the outcome you're looking for. So metrics, and if we don't meet those metrics, who do we hold accountable?
I can initially respond to that. So I'm currently the chair of the LCME accreditation review of my medical institution. And one of the things that I appreciate about being able to be in that role is that not only can I use the required questions that the AMC, requires that we ask, but I was able to add questions as well. And a lot of those questions were intended to kind of dig deeper into the issues that we face as an institution as it relates to diversity and really more so inclusion. Our numbers of applicants that come from diverse backgrounds have increased pretty substantially, but the inclusivity efforts and how those inclusivity efforts are resonating with students has been a challenge. And so part of me though wonders, I'm not sure if this is working. Part of me wonders, what if I didn't add those questions? Are they being asked? Those questions I think are the most important. And to your point, provide data, provide analytics, and also provide us an opportunity to be able to track the responses over time. And so I would love to get to a point where I don't wonder if I ask, will it be asked? As a trainee, right? I think that really kind of I believe the solution is in embedding, those questions into the curriculum, into the medical school's own evaluations, right? And I think also we can leverage trainees' experiences and ask them, what should we be asking? What parts of your experience would you like for us to evaluate too? So those are my initial thoughts. I think it's an important question.
Question. I don't want to overspeak, so let me know if I'm talking too much.
Okay, go ahead, Jared.
So I think that's a great question, and I think that needs to be incorporated more when we start talking about DEI. I think a lot of the times we do get hung up on some of the interpersonal relationships of how folks are making us feel, but there's good data out there that can be found within our institutions that show that, you know, that some of these disparities do exist. And so what we've done at Emory is we've incorporated a disparities M&M, and when we look at some institutional data and we say, you know, this was happening with patients because this wasn't occurring, and this wasn't occurring is because this patient was a part of this group, right? You know, this higher risk group or whatever else. And so we have the data there. And so everyone can see it from divisional chiefs to chairs to attendings to residents to medical students. And so, you know, that's kind of how we hold ourselves accountable, and then we go about fixing, you know, issues within the system. I think the other thing too is looking at the composition of our faculty, looking at the composition of our residents, and saying, I think what Emory, the School of Medicine, has done is they said they want their medical school to reflect what the Georgia population looks like. And so if there's 20% or 30% of the Georgia population that is Black, then probably the medical school should have 20 to 30% of the folks that look like the Georgia population. And I think those are metrics that you can hold yourself accountable to, and it gives you goals to continue to reach out towards.
We'll take these last two questions.
Thank you all for really insightful panel. I'm Kaylin G, a third-year general surgery resident at UT Knoxville. What I wanted to ask was if you had any recommendations in this age of virtual interviews. Our residents are pretty involved in the recruitment process, and we in East Tennessee are not the most diverse area, but have several residents invested in diversifying the trainees that we're recruiting. And so what specific things would you have liked to see, or would demonstrate to you that diversity, equity, inclusion are important, is something that at least the residents are striving for, while the administration may be lagging behind somewhat in that department.
Let me ask one of our panelists to take that.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. I know when I was going through interviews, this was something that was a big forefront in my mind. Obviously, you can't look at me. I mean, I guess maybe you could, but you can't really say for sure that I'm gay when you look at me. It's something I have to tell people. And so I think creating an open space where we can talk about how people are diverse. It was in my application that I was gay, but I know a lot of students that would feel uncomfortable putting something like that in there. But again, just having, I know a lot of program directors during interviews will have a talk, a PowerPoint, something of that nature, just having a slide on diversity, like we want you here. We are going to make efforts to include everyone that would want to come here. Just having an open statement like that means a lot. Whenever I was going through interviews, I would write down if that was something that a program director did. I would write down if people noticed that I was gay and brought it up in an interview in a positive way. Obviously, there were some negative ways, and I did not go to those institutions, but yeah, those sort of things, just having an open conversation, creating a safe space, and trying to keep the dialogue flowing that we want you here. You can be comfortable here. If you are at an institution that would be accepting of people that are diverse. So I don't know.
And our final question.
Thanks to all of you. I'm going to ask a very pragmatic question, and I really want to get perspective on what solutions you might have for this. Okay, so as you probably figured out from now on, so I'm from West Virginia. West Virginia is not a southern state. It's an Appalachian state. It's never been a state that has had a racially charged environment. It's always been what I would consider a state that is pretty welcoming to all cultures, ethnicities, sexual origins. If you look at our demographics, though, we're about 91% white. And, that includes non-Hispanic whites, including the Middle Eastern population. If you look at our trainees, we're pretty diverse in terms of representation of Asians, Middle Easterners, LGBTQ community, different religious preferences. But West Virginia continues to have only about a 4% Black or African-American population. So when we look at our faculty roster, our residents, we would like to increase that. We don't see the applicants. They aren't interested in us. And on the one hand, we could say, well, I don't want to look at that program in West Virginia because they don't have a lot of people that look like me. I can't get people to look at us, so I can increase that diversity. So what can we do to make ourselves more attractive, increase our diversity, benefit from that, and also benefit the applicants by bringing them to a place where they truly will be welcome?
I think offering opportunities to look at, for example, I mean, when I was in training in Puerto Rico, I was scared about the same thing, right? Like, where am I going? Why do I want to go there? I don't know where I'm going. So I think I did two big opportunities that were in front of me. One of them was summer research program, and I did in New York. And I found out about it just through online digging, right? And so I went there and I spent a summer at the program. And that's when I was like, oh, they want diversity. They want me here. And they are really welcoming about it. So I think that's kind of how I reached out to them, because they were offering these opportunities for minorities.
I'd like to just add on to that. And although it is really important for applicants themselves to seek out opportunities, I heard you say that the environment is not racially charged and has been welcoming. I think that I would also want to ask someone who may be part of the minoritized communities as well to hear about their experience. And I think going into the community, I don't know what the community alliances look like, with your institution. If coming from Atlanta, I have the good fortune of being able to be surrounded by a lot of people who I find, part of my community. But even if I was not in a place like that, I think that knowing that the program that I'm going to has a community feel to it, even if it's not diverse in and of itself, highlighting the ways that, applicants could find themselves in community, kind of speaking to the other point about highlighting the diversity that you do have. And then I think also just being very transparent about even some of those statistics that you spoke about. I think I would really appreciate knowing that the program that I would be applying to is, very practical and real about that, so that we can find solutions together potentially when, if that applicant were to choose your program. But I think it's a great question and it's really encouraging to hear it asked.
Just one last thing, similar to what she was saying about summer programs and research programs. When I was applying, I was getting a lot of emails from my mentors about like places that were offering AIs that were sponsors. So they have scholarships for this. And so I think that could be a good way if you have that in place and you're able to distribute that to different institutions. They might be able to specifically target individuals that might identify as being underrepresented and be interested in going and at least just experiencing that place for a month.
All right, thank you.
I know, some of these panels, we make it seem like, it's the program or it's the institution, it's the department that's causing these issues of lack of diversity. We understand that there are societal ills that have brought us to this point. And I think that in order to correct those things, we have to put just as much energy as it took to create those ills in the first place. And so there is an issue with the number of diverse surgical applicants in the first place. And I think that's kind of one of the issues that your program may be having, is the sheer number of applicants just isn't there. And so there's probably more opportunities and more programs than there is programs for them to go to. So then that's a pipeline issue. Where are we losing those applicants? Are we losing them as pre-meds? Are there pre-med advisors telling them that they're not good enough, their scores aren't good enough for them to be physicians, and then they pursue some other career? Is it in medical school where they said, you're not good enough or you're not smart enough to be a surgeon, and you're losing, applicants in that realm? And that's where we go back into the community. Emory's had some initiatives where they actually went to my high school, my alma mater, and did programs there and, showed those kids that you guys can become surgeons as well. And you guys can, pursue these paths, and these things are wholly possible. Now, I know we were asking you to confront societal issues, but if we want change, and I've sat in on a number of presentations here today that want to change, how we practice surgery, how we educate residents, how we do a lot of things. And these are some of the things that we're going to have to do.
And I think eventually too, the individual applicants, are going to be put to a decision to whether or not they're willing to take a chance on a program like the one I've described, where I can assure you they would be welcome, but they would be a trailblazer. And then others would follow. And that's a leap of faith, I recognize, but I think that's probably where it's going to have to head, so thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Bland.
Thank you, Colin. And Wendy, with Dr. Green, thank you very much for organizing this meeting. I think it's one of the best discussions I've heard in opening a DEI that I have today. But I congratulate each of you. And I just hope that we have across the board in medical schools throughout the United States and Canada are applying the criteria you just talked about. Now we have the American Board of Surgery is established. You become a diplomate after you have met the criteria for an examination, oral and a written examination. Is a good reason you have an oral exam. And you also have a residency review committee that's the oversight leader amongst the governing bodies to make sure there's full compliance in the residency program. I sat on that for 10 years. So it is a very hard working committee, probably harder than the ABS. But just to let you know that we try to look at this too. This violation probably would even feed its way into the RRC if there were incompatible management amongst the school. And in this case, it's going to be a department. So I would ask you each, whoever can answer this, how many of you have schools that have a designated DEI officer? And secondly, who in the department do you send it down to make sure there's compliance? And if there's not, are you responsible for feedback back to your dean, who is ultimately responsible to the president? Now, I know how we do it at UAB, and Colin is a fantastic oversight person for this, but I just wonder if this is an ongoing issue, and what is the frequency, Colin and Wendy, in American society today to know this is a very important issue to all of us who are educators. We want this to be taken care of. To me, it's just like a civil rights issue, and it is. Frankly, you want to be treated as everyone else, and you want to treat your brother and sister, regardless of their color, creed, national origin, whatever, all the same way. That's what we're doing. It's what Martin Luther King worked to do. I would appreciate if anybody could help me with this.
Yeah, Dr. Bland, thank you so much for your comments, and thank you for all that you've done for American Surgery, but also DEI. I might just comment on that, and then we'll transition this part of the session to Dr. Green. And I think it comes back to having policies in place. And so it's hard to think about how to affect manage a problem without a policy. And often the work that's done at institutions is based on an individual, not a policy. And so understanding flow, leadership charts, flow diagrams, what happens if a certain issue were to occur, having that in place so that no matter who's in charge, who's the chair, who's the vice chair for DEI, those policies are in place. But thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Dr. Green.
If we could give our panelists a big round of applause as they step down off of the dais. Thank you very much. Thank you all so much. As our panelists leave, we're going to now have the distinct honor of introducing and starting our American College of Surgeons discussion session. And we have the one and only Patricia Turner from the American College of Surgeons, who's going to be giving us an update. Dr. Turner is the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the American College of Surgeons and a Clinical Associate Professor at the University of Chicago Medicine. She was previously Director of the Division of Member Services at the American College of Surgeons, and before joining the college, Dr. Turner spent 8 years in full-time academic practice on the University of Maryland School of Medicine faculty, where she was the Surgery Residency Program Director. Roles in national professional organizations or institutions included member of the Board of Directors of the Council of Medical Specialty Societies and Ocean First Bank, corporate member, CEO of the Joint Commission, Specialty Society CEO Coalition member, and Chair of the Society of Black Academic Surgeons Foundation Fund, past Chair of the American College of Surgeons Delegation to the AMA House of Delegates, AMA Council on Medical Education and Surgical Section of the NMA, past President of the Society of Black Academic Surgeons, and past member of the Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center Board of Directors. A graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and the Bowman Gray School of Medicine at Wake Forest, Dr. Turner continued her training as an intern and resident in surgery at Howard University Hospital in Washington, D.C. Her fellowship training in minimally invasive and laparoscopic surgery was completed at the Mount Sinai School of Medicine, Weill Cornell University School of Medicine, and Columbia University School of Medicine in New York City. Her MBA was completed at the University of Maryland, Robert H. Smith School of Business. Dr. Turner is board certified in surgery, is a fellow of the American College of Surgeons, and member of the American Surgical Association, American Medical Association, National Medical Association, Southern Surgical Association, Southeastern Surgical Congress, Society of University Surgeons, Society of Black Academic Surgeons, Association of Women Surgeons, Latino Surgical Society, and an honorary member of the Association de Colombia de Cirugía. I would like to now introduce Dr. Patricia Turner.
Thank you, Dr. Green, and good afternoon to all of you. Dr. Sutherland and I are actually going to do this session about the American College of Surgeons, and it's really a privilege to be here this afternoon. Because we're both longtime members of this organization, and because, as all of you know, Dr. Sutherland has recently taken over as a director of the Division of Member Services for the American College of Surgeons, and we are so glad to have him in that role. We thought it would be more interesting if we covered some of these topics together. We're going to bounce back and forth through the slides and hopefully leave some time at the end for questions. I know that time is a little bit short, so we'll move quickly, but it's really a privilege to see all of you, and as always, to have the privilege of the podium here at the Southeastern. So there are no conflicts for either of us. And I'll start just with a couple of words that some of you have heard me emphasize before. So for over 100 years, the motto of the college has been to heal all with skill and trust. And that continues to be our priority, and that continues to guide us 110 years into our history. So the notion of healing all represents some of what you heard in the earlier session that was put together by the Southeastern, and we are really, we learned a lot by listening to our young people. Healing all really brings to mind these issues of purpose, inclusivity, taking care of all patients, supporting all surgeons, whatever their practice pattern, whatever their location. The notion of skill really emphasizes the educational components of what we do at the ACS, and thinking about innovation and training and education and being very much on the front lines of skill. And the issues around trust are integrity and values and the comfort that our patients have, knowing that they're being cared for at a hospital that provides high quality surgical care. So reliability and assurance. And so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but just know that we are guided both internally and externally by these tenets. Whether or not we are thinking about making sure that every surgeon of every specialty has a home within the ACS, whether we're thinking about ways to be innovative and on the bleeding edge of educational technology and just-in-time education, whether we're thinking about how to better articulate what surgeons do, what surgeons are, and reassure the public that their trust is well placed in us. As we think about how to exert an impact in healthcare delivery systems and not just concern ourselves with surgical issues, but how do we change the healthcare system writ large? How do we change the way that surgeons are valued? How do we get away from an RVU system and start talking about how we fit into the spectrum of a hospital? And we are, in most cases, the engine that drives many of our institutions. How do we think about recognizing all of the ways that surgeons are part of the fabric? So as we look forward, thinking about our quality programs and how we streamline into a unified platform to make it easier for your hospitals to engage with us in our quality efforts. When we think about education, enhancing collaboration, Dr. Brand mentioned the RRC. And so thinking about ways that we work with the ACGME, that we work with the Joint Commission, that we work with other specialty societies to figure out how to change the conversation in a positive way. When we think about each surgeon and what it is that their value proposition means to them and how to articulate that and what the value is of the American College of Surgeons, how it is that we think about supporting you in your practice, whatever that may be, whether you are employed, whether you are in a private practice setting, in a 1 or 2 person practice, whether you are an academician. And communications. We'll spend a moment or two on all of these elements, but thinking about how to communicate with you more effectively. So I would share with you some of our new branding. Hopefully you've seen some of this. There are so many ACS programs that are not identified as ACS programs. So there are people who say, oh, I love the COT, but don't know that the COT is a college. There are people who say, I love the cancer database, but don't recognize that that is part of the ACS. So we have unveiled over the last year new program branding, and you can see it arrayed here on the slide that will help to create some of the brand equity that we value. The new ACS website, hopefully you've had a chance to try it out. There are some new elements there that we hope will make it easier for you to engage with us. We're mindful that the website should not be organized like an org chart of the organization. So hopefully you are finding it more facile. And please do let us know your feedback. You can see we've worked on improving some other elements of our communication efforts. So there, the bulletin brief on the far left has been transformed to be more interactive and hopefully more useful to you. And you can see elements that are more interactive, and ideally over time, we'll be able to have them be more personalized, which is the ultimate holy grail of information, that it should be personalized to deliver the content that you want. There's a new look to the bulletin as well, which reflects, again, a mindfulness that you have lots of ways that you can get information. So thinking about how we convey information to you in a way that is most effective is part of our work. JAX 2 has been redesigned, so you'll see these themes carried through many of our publications. And then finally, before I shift the reins to Dr. Sutherland, we have some new podcasts. Again, mindful that individuals receive education in different ways. Our goal is to be innovative and responsive and to deliver content to you the way that you want to receive it. So we have 3 new podcasts: The Operative Word, Surgical Readings from Selected way. Dr. Sutherland.
So membership is a key to the organization, just as any organization. And this is just a brief overview of where we are currently. And this is broken down by our fellows, our associates, residents, and medical students, which form the pipeline to membership and are so important to the success of the organization. Total membership continues to grow. It was 84,000 last year. We had a net increase over the last year, and we continue to see the interest that is driving that continued participation in the college. To that effect, we recognize the importance of residents as that pipeline and initiated a resident dues pilot where for 3 years, 22, 23, and 24, all residents in surgical specialties would be able to participate in the activities of the American College of Surgeons as full-fledged resident members for free. That's a discount of what was $25 a person per year. But more importantly, it was about that engagement and gathering individuals and demonstrating the value added benefits that membership provides. We're in the middle of that right now. We are a couple more years to go with this, and we're very excited about the response that we've seen in the increase in the number of specifically subspecialty members that have joined as a result of that. The YFA is another area that is very active within the Division of Member Services that supports the activities of young fellows, those under the age of 45 who've completed their fellowships and training and become full-fledged fellows of the college. You can see some of the work groups that they focus on there and are really active in bringing the important perspective of people just entering practice and new into practice to the college in order to maintain the relevancy of what we offer in that specific space. Similarly, the Resident and Associate Society is very similarly structured and provides that input that we need from young surgeons that are still in training in order for us to ensure that we are remaining current and active in providing the both educational products, the services, and the affinity benefits to those individuals so that there is value added benefit to that membership that allows them to recognize the importance of the college in their career and transition forward. For those of you that may not have been aware, medical student memberships exist for the college. It's a one-time fee of $20 to join, and carries you through your entirety of medical school. Has the lot of different benefits that are designed to help individuals make the decision that surgery is the right career specialty for them. Chapters really form the backbone, and many of you here come from local chapters that are represented by the states of the Southeastern Surgical Congress, as well as other states throughout the country and around the world. With over 120 chapters throughout the world, 68 of those being in the United States, we bring together the governors to offer input and perspective from each of those individual geographic regions so that we have a clear pipeline from you as a member on through to us in the Chicago office, the Board of Regents, and the Executive Director's office as well, so that we know what is important in terms of being able to provide that to our members and ensure that that is in line with what they're expecting from us. The scholarships and fellowships are one area of the college that fall under the Division of Member Services. And you can see there's quite a few domestic as well as some international fellowships. These are brought about primarily through the generosity of members who give through the foundation and allow us to provide these opportunities both for research-based and traveling experiences for fellows throughout the college and throughout the world. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Turner.
Thank you, Dr. Sutherland. I'm going to talk a little bit about quality. I know many of you know of some of our quality programs, but I think it's important to emphasize all of the ways in which we want to engage with you at your hospitals around quality improvement efforts. So you can see here arrayed on the slide a number of the icons representing many of our quality programs. Importantly, there are quality programs that are focused on a particular operation. There are quality programs that are done jointly with a particular specialty. There are quality programs that cut across the spectrum and look at phases of life. So our children's verification or our geriatric verification. So my goal in emphasizing that is that there is a quality program for nearly everyone. There are some arrayed here on the screen. Again, I won't read them all to you, but you, I hope, have in your hospitals one or more of these quality programs. And if you are interested, we can certainly provide information about how to engage. In fact, we're putting together a toolkit for surgeon champions so that you can more aptly have conversations with those in the C-suite about the value of engaging with our quality improvement programs. The emergency general surgery verification program just debuted a few months back, done jointly with the AAST. Coming soon, the vascular verification project done jointly with the SVS, high-risk GI, general thoracic surgery verification program. So look for all of those to come online very shortly within the next year. I'll spend just a moment on geriatric surgery verification because often the question that I'm asked is, how is it that we're supposed to do these things that cost money? Is it going to change the bottom line? Is it going to change the ways in which we are paid if we participate in efforts that deliver higher quality? And this is a great example of where we're actually seeing some of that change as part of our advocacy efforts on the Hill. So with input from other organizations that we worked with on this, emergency medicine and others, we've been able to get conditional support for rulemaking from CMS for the elements of our quality improvement program for geriatric surgery. So that is essentially the first step before something can have a variation in payment, is for CMS to acknowledge this is important. We value this. This is a high quality set of measures, and we approve those measures. And so this is what we've been able to accomplish as a result of some of the really hard work of our advocacy and health policy team. So this programmatic measure means that Medicare can be confident that we're doing the things that we're supposed to be doing around frailty, making sure that geriatric care is being provided in an appropriate way. And so this is, as I said, the first step in reimbursement, which is often a question that's asked over and above what we know to be true, which is that outcomes are better. Quality programs, again, I know that many in this room are already well aware of our TQIP meeting and the TQIP program, but we have resumed systems consultations. There is a rural trauma group, which is revising the standards for level 4 trauma centers, mindful that we are not all in academic level 1 trauma centers, that many of our patients get care in level 3 or level 4 trauma centers. So we are making sure that those standards are updated. And there was a successful TQIP conference held in December, again, looking at quality improvement efforts around trauma. Our cancer programs, we are establishing the first Cancer National Quality Improvement Collaborative. There are a number of updated standards, the advanced breast care standards, the pediatric oncology standards, and have signed up for the new AJCC content as well. So for those of you who are cancer surgeons, you probably are aware that the cancer meeting as well as the COT meeting are coming up in March. So I'm going to spend just one moment on the Power of Quality campaign, which is unveiling. I mentioned it briefly, sort of a soft launch, a tease, if you will, at Clinical Congress. But we are now actively in the launch phase of the Power of Quality campaign. And so the purpose of this campaign is to drive awareness and respect for our quality programs and to enhance the elements that get them incorporated into payment metrics. Again, I know that for those of us in this room who are clinicians, we recognize that improved quality is better for patients. It minimizes preventable death. It minimizes complications. It costs less. So it does bend the cost curve. But for those who are non-clinicians, we have to often make a much more concrete argument about how it is that it has an impact so that we can incorporate it into the payment metrics. There are a number of primary stakeholders. I mean, you can see them arrayed there: the patients, the surgeons themselves, hospital systems, and the payers and policymakers. And so our goal, ambitious though it may be, is to bring the ACS quality programs to every hospital and every patient in America. So this is a multi-year effort. You'll hear much more about it, but it will begin this year with surgeons and hospital systems. We'll be doing patient pilots. In year 2, we'll expand to try to impact the payers, the policymakers, the surgeons, the hospital systems themselves, mindful that we'll be working both vertically and horizontally, so across hospitals and in verticals in hospital systems. Again, mindful that in a system, you may impact the academic quaternary care center, and you may also impact the community hospitals, all of whom are part of the same system. And then finally, the national rollout, which will include, again, the payers, the policymakers, and the press. So the strategy is really to leverage what is the credibility of the college with the reach of our hospital partners to carry the message of our surgeons. We want to make sure that everyone is aware of the quality programs and of the essential nature of the quality programs. And our surgeon leaders and champions who will engage with department and division leadership in an academic setting with senior partners and owners in a private practice setting can then engage in mobilizing to embrace the quality improvement efforts. And this is what this might look like. There's actually going to be a quality diamond, sort of the good housekeeping seal of approval, that will be unveiled. And you can envision it being something that is represented in a hospital or in a waiting room. And there are significant elements of that we can talk about if we have time during questions. I'm going to speak briefly about education, only to say that there is a wealth of educational content for literally every stage along a surgeon's life. We have it from medical students up to and through retirement, and there is truly something for everyone. So arrayed on the slide, and I don't have time to go through each one of them, are our resources for surgery residents, surgery fellows, and medical students. So there are hands-on skills courses. There are courses that allow you to enhance your leadership skills, your ability to communicate effectively. There are mastery programs that are, again, are more didactic and hands-on. So we want to make sure that those in training are ready to be independent practitioners. There are resources for the practicing surgeon and for surgical teams. Again, mindful that we have elements of teamness in the care that we provide. There is content that is appropriate for nurses, for nurse reviewers, for our PAs, our surgical techs. So those individuals have content for them as well. And then there are specific applied skill sets in education, evidence-based decisions, ethics, communication, leadership. So in addition to all of what is clearly in our lane, so to speak, as far as education, how to do the operation properly and what you need to know in order to do that, both from a didactic and hands-on element, there are these other skills that we also know that we need as surgeons, and we address those needs as well. There are resources for the patients themselves and caregivers. So our patient safety and patient education elements have become much more robust, multiple languages, multiple operations. And this is, of course, available to you to use to educate your patients. I personally use the cholecystectomy one quite a lot, and patients loved it. There are ostomy kits, ostomy education kits, so you can actually teach someone who's going to have an ostomy at the end of their operation how to care for it. There are elements about smoking cessation, hernia repair, how to manage your wounds. So all of this is directed specifically at our patients. My CME, I'll take one moment to comment on something that many of you who are diplomates of the ABS may have received correspondence that the ABS is changing the way that it's going to send CME to the ACCME. So stay tuned for communication from us at the ACS as we try to support you through this change that the board is making. You should look for some correspondence from us tomorrow to make sure that all of your CME that you may be storing in my CME is appropriately sent over to the board. So there's nothing that there is something that you'll have to do, but it's something that many of us have done before as part of our sending our CME to the board. And you'll get some specific instruction about that tomorrow from the college to keep you, help you stay in compliance as diplomates of the ABS. ATLS, again, known to many of you and worldwide, highly recognized. Stop the Bleed. Over 2 million people have learned to stop the bleed. And bleeding control kits, we are very pleased to say, are becoming not quite as ubiquitous as AEDs, but that is certainly our goal. The city of Chicago has decided that they're going to put our Stop the Bleed kits in every municipal building. The governor of California recently signed legislation that every new building in California will have Stop the Bleed kits installed. You may see them if you're ever in O'Hare, they're in the airport. So wherever you are, you will start to see more of these Stop the Bleed kits. I personally keep one in my car, but we're excited to say that over 2.1 million people have gone through our training and have learned how to be bystanders who can be helpful in a traumatic situation. So we're going to shift, and Dr. Sutherland will talk about advocacy.
So advocacy is generally viewed as one of the biggest areas that we spend time on at the college that benefits our fellows out in practice. It's a hugely valuable member benefit. It really impacts everyone, and it is the unique tie that binds us across the House of Surgery, and it helps us build that membership engagement to develop both future leaders and also bring about the awareness at the legislative level in order to ensure that our voices are heard and we can protect the access for our patients and our ability to practice in an environment that is appropriate. So it really boils down to the fact that the policymakers want to hear from you. There's a lot of complex aspects to what we do. It's shrouded in mystery. If you're not a physician, if you're not a surgeon, understanding exactly what happens in the operating room is foreign to most people, and how those interactions with our patients go are lost on them. And if we don't bring that information to our legislators, we are going to fail in imparting upon them the importance of what we do and the importance of those relationships to their constituents. So if in the absence of our voice, other voices become louder. So it really is a key important aspect of what we do on a daily basis. For those of you that have ever had the chance to visit our office in Washington, D.C., it's steps from the Capitol, and it provides us with incredible access to the legislators, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, in order to move forward legislative priorities such as the ones that you see on the screen. There's also a lot of focus in the state legislative priorities for us. We look for evidence of bills in state legislative houses that are important to the both scope of practice and the execution of practice throughout the United States, and try to get that to the chapters in order to help them recognize the opportunity to intervene in those areas and work with their local legislatures in order to ensure that the message gets across and that their voices are heard. We also spend time in these other areas, both physician payment in terms of coverage determinations and pre-authorizations, trauma and injury prevention, as well as medical liability form, cancer prevention, and the list goes on. Surgeon's Voice is a website that surgeonsvoice.org, which takes you to the advocacy aspect of what we do at the American College of Surgeons, and allows you with simple multiple clicks, just using your mouse to get this information to your legislators, where it shows up as a tally mark for them on people in the district that are for something versus people in the district that are against something. It's just very simple. And most importantly is our access to those individuals. Whenever we want to have meetings, they look back, and one of the things that helps us in that regard is our donations through Surgeons PAC that allow us to contribute to fundraisers and other activities for key members of the legislature, who allow us to then access them and share our information, share our points of view in order to ensure that that messaging gets across at the most personal level. Grassroots is a key to this, and that's why we bring it up in these types of talks, because it is those personal interactions that you have both with your legislator in the district, at home there in your state, or in Washington, D.C., that really impact their decision making. If you take time out of your busy schedule and make an effort to go see them, they remember that, and it becomes the stories that you tell and the anecdotes of patients that you share with them really do become the decision-making criteria that they use to tie the realities of a legislative action to the impact that it's going to have on a member of their constituency. So we talked about building relationships. This is a screenshot from Surgeon's Voice, and I encourage you, if you haven't been there, just to take a look at it. It is very easy to use. One other thing that I would also plug is that for those of you that participate in the care of patients with ventral abdominal hernias, there's been some changes to how that is coded, and that has been a project through the advocacy office, through the General Surgery Coding and Reimbursement Committee at the college. And I would encourage you to go to either the communities or to the advocacy section of the website, and you can download or view the webinars that were done on this, and provide a lot more information in terms of the why, the how, and what you need to know in order to be in compliance with how to correctly code for those cases going forward. Just another aspect of what goes on in our advocacy office. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Turner to talk about the foundation.
Thank you. I can't come to the Southeastern and see Dr. Sharp in the back of the room without acknowledging his significant efforts on behalf of our foundation. There are so many efforts that the foundation supports at the ACS. We give out about $2 million a year in scholarships and fellowships, and that is across the entire spectrum: trainees, private practice, academicians, addendums to R01s, traveling awards, community service awards to fund people to come to clinical congress, international traveling fellowships. So there is a lot that your foundation dollars do. It also supports efforts like our Future Trauma Leaders program. It supports efforts like our Operation Giving Back humanitarian outreach efforts, our clinical scholars, patient education. Some of those programs that we discussed are underwritten by foundation dollars. So please do consider giving to the foundation. We are in February. March is Doctor's Day, and we usually have a Doctor's Day campaign where we actually encourage donations to be made in the name of someone who might have been a mentor to you or who might have been an advocate for you. So please do think about the foundation. And here, just if anybody wants to take a picture of that, there are many different ways that you can give, and we would certainly be able to answer any questions that you might have about those efforts as well. So just a few words about upcoming meetings. I mentioned briefly the ACS Cancer Conference, so that's coming up in March. The ACS Surgical Simulation Summit, for those of you that are engaged in education and simulation, both high and low fidelity, that's also in March in Chicago. The COT meeting in Chicago also in March. The ACS Residents as Teachers and Leaders course later in the month of March. I would encourage all of you to attend all of the meetings, of course, but particularly the Leadership and Advocacy Summit, which is April 15 through 18 in DC. For those of you who have been there to that meeting before, you know that it is full of actionable, thoughtful pieces of advice that you can use at whatever level you are along your leadership journey. So there are specific actionable skills that you'll glean from that, and then it leads directly into our advocacy efforts. So you can come and engage in a way that is actually very personable. We have a social event on the Saturday evening, which is a great opportunity to mix and mingle with the regents and the governors and the officers and the chapter leaders. We do have resident scholarships that are available. We highlight chapter success stories because we really do want to share those best practices. Which is all day Sunday. There is a kickoff event for the advocacy component of it on the Sunday night. And then Monday are educational sessions with senators or congresspeople or legislative aides. And then on Tuesday are Hill visits. So please do mark your calendars and try to make it. It's always a great meeting. The Quality and Safety Conference in July in Minnesota. Again, this is a great meeting. If you are a newly engaged person in quality improvement, this is a great meeting. If you have been doing it for a long time, this is a great meeting. If you are wanting to engage other members of your healthcare team or other non-clinician individuals at your hospital to help them understand why quality is important, this is a great meeting. So there are individuals that are across the entire spectrum of the healthcare team. And this is a meeting that gives specific actionable steps about how to implement quality improvement programs at your institution, and indeed how to improve the improvement process. So lots of great work in that meeting always. Clearly, Clinical Congress is our flagship event, and I would encourage you all to mark your calendars, October 22 to 26. This year it's in Boston, and we certainly hope to see you there. And one of the things that we're mindful about is really trying to be as efficient as possible with your time and know how difficult it is to be away from your practice or your families or your research or whatever it is that is keeping you at home. So we're being thoughtful about compressing Clinical Congress this Thursday morning. As some of you will remember, there used to be a few sessions on Thursday morning. We've been able to redistribute those sessions earlier in the meeting. So the meeting will end on Wednesday evening. So you can get all of the content and be able to leave bright and early Thursday morning and still get all of the content. So we have redistributed those Thursday morning sessions and we'll close on Wednesday with some of the really high-powered sessions that people really enjoyed. So the top 10 things that you would want to know and put those sessions on Wednesday afternoon. Immediately following that will be the annual business meeting of the fellows, to which of course you were all invited if you're fellows of the college, and then the Taste of the City event. And that will be the bookend at the end of the meeting. So our contact information is here. Please do reach out and ask us any questions that you might have. I do want to recognize, of course, Dr. Richmond, President, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And many of our leaders are here, are members of this organization. Dr. Nakayama is our ACS treasurer. Dr. Stewart is the chair of our advisory council chairs. We have 14 advisory councils, and he's the chair of the advisory council chairs. Dr. Sharp in the back, one of our regents who I already acknowledged, and Dr. Elsie is over here, who is a former regent. And there are many individuals who are leaders of this organization that are also leaders or past leaders of the ACS. And I can't recognize everyone because there are really so many, and we are really thrilled for the longtime relationship of the ACS and the Southeastern Surgical. So with that, thank you so much for your attention, and both Mike and I would be pleased to answer any questions.
Yeah, not so much a question, but just a reminder for all the residents that the American College of Surgeons has insurance products that are free. We have a life insurance product that is free for every year that you sign in for it. We also have disability insurance that's free, like at no cost. And so it's something that you don't really think about because, as everyone knows, that young residents are immortal and vulnerable. But these are really, really tangible benefits that the college provides to residents.
Thank you for highlighting that. I really will emphasize what Dr. Nakayama just said. You know, we want you to have the appropriate insurances, and we recognize that some of you, perhaps like me, didn't have disability insurance until you were walking out of the hospital that last day of residency and signed up like in the cafeteria. You know, that is something that we know you need, even if you don't know that you need it. So Dr. Sutherland and his team are going to be able to help you if you have any questions about that.
Richards from Mobile. Thanks for the update. Some really great ACS programs. One of the things on advocacy, you know, this new hernia coding, the programs, the webinars and the slide decks are absolutely outstanding. One of the things that concerns me is that CMS we made recommendations to CMS about the 0 global days, and they completely ignored it.
So this is a very common phenomenon in the recent years. Up until about 15 years ago, when recommendations were sent to CMS through the Relative Update Committee of the AMA, they were followed about 98% of the time. And about 12 to 15 years ago, that started to shift, and that number has dropped to around 70%, 75% of the time. There's external pressures on the agency in order to make sure their priorities are met, and we get caught in the crossfire. One of the things that we're dealing with right now in terms of this hernia code and some of the other codes that we see is that there is a general perception at CMS that surgeons don't see their patients in the postoperative period. And while many of us do see our patients and take very good care of them in the postoperative period, the data that they have collected, which is flawed, and the anecdotes which they have received and treated as data do not necessarily support that. So we are working in an environment that is skewed against us. And ideally, we want to get to a point where this isn't the factor that we're measuring our productivity on. But in the current time, we have to make some changes to how we're doing things in order to best leverage the existing payment structure and payment methodology to protect the ability for surgeons to be compensated for what they do.
Well, anyway, thank you for doing those webinars and everything else. The second comment, and I've talked to a number of surgeons today and in past weeks about the coming crisis that we have in nursing. We can't find nurses, particularly for the operating room. And I've talked to surgeon after surgeon, surgical leaders, average general surgeons, community surgeons, every place. And we're not opening up the ORs. We're not running the ORs as late as we used to. And we're training nurses for the operating room for 6 months, and then they last for about a year, and then they go on to be a nurse practitioner. So my question to you is, do we need to advocate for another type of personnel like medical assistants
And as you said, every surgeon in every hospital recognizes that we are struggling. We can't do cases because the PACUs are full, and we can't get the PACUs empty because the ICUs are full. And it's just on and on and on. There are a couple of challenges. One is that we have, our nursing colleagues are critically important to us, but they are also not necessarily allies with us in this conversation, because they are representing the interests of their membership, which in many cases they're being directed to go and be nurse practitioners or doctors of nursing practice or what have you. As we all know, the narrative that has allowed them to do that is that they go and practice where there are no doctors, and that they're serving a need, and that they're allowing patient access. We know that to be untrue. There are many papers and many maps that are overlaid that show that the nurse practitioners are exactly where the doctors are, and they're not in the underserved areas any more than the doctors are. So that is not really the case, but they have been able to advocate very effectively to have independent practices and so on and so forth. If you superimpose that on a couple of things that happened in the pandemic, which is that individuals left the workforce for a number of reasons, and women were more likely than men to leave the workforce overall. And because nurses are predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly women, that impacted the nursing field. Another thing that happened is there were some individuals who were disinclined to be vaccinated for the COVID with the COVID vaccine because of what we know, of course, was misinformation about its impact on fertility. But those individuals were often not able to work in a hospital because there was a requirement that you be vaccinated to work in the hospital. And so they were unwilling and they left the workforce. And then we have the traveler issue, which is that they're being paid 4 or 5 times market rate to be travelers, which is keeping them from sticking in one place. Now, that having been said, there are a number of best practices that are being shared that have come to light. One is that the ability to bring people on board quickly is very important. So there are, for many institutions, there's a rolling process to onboard nurses. So if you say you want to hire them, but they have to wait 2 weeks to be onboarded, they're not waiting, they're going somewhere else. So this rolling process of onboarding so that you can say that you want a job, we can hire you today and you can start working tomorrow, has been helpful in some places. As I said, the AORN and other nursing organizations are not necessarily our allies on this. And we have not really advocated for there to be a lower level of healthcare team member, in large part because some of our hospitals really need RNs, like they really need that level of care to care for patients on the floor in the OR. So it is a thorny problem. We are trying to work to figure out what we can do to support our surgeons. I do know that nursing schools are churning out more nursing students. But that will be, it will take a couple of years to prime the pump. And so in the meantime, we are seeing what we're seeing, which is that it's expensive, but you end up having to pay travelers or have individuals come in who are not the A team that we're all used to having in the OR because our teams are broken up. I wish I had a better answer, but it's a multi-pronged challenge.
One, thank you guys for coming down. You're all busy guys. I wanted to give a personal testimony to the absolute magnificence of the American College of Surgeons. I spent 11 years, 2 years as a secretary of the Board of Governors and 9 years as a regent in the room. And I will tell you that every single issue that's brought in front of the college is taken seriously and worked over and mulled over and fixed if it can all be fixed. And I don't know that many organizations that I've been around that are that dedicated to its membership. And I see this new leadership with Mike and Pat is taking that and moving forward from that too. And I appreciate you guys. The second thing I'd like to do, the younger members in the room, I'd like to put a plug in for the massive amount of outstanding educational material that's available through the college. And we just, at MUSC, I was tasked to redesign the medical student surgical clerkship information. And the college bent over backwards with us, for sending us information, volumes of information, oh, by the way, that has just been wonderful. So thank you for all you guys do. I really mean it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you as well for the on-demand program option. that allows us to get the CME all the way to May. That's just fantastic. That's just great in terms of me being able to experience the whole American College of Surgeons instead of running around the convention centers trying to get to all the sessions. It's been excellent. So I just want to say that that bit of innovation is very, very, very helpful to me. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. And just one additional comment on that. We are able to be much more rigorous this year than we have been in the past as we delve down into clinical Congress attendance. We are able to see how many people attended every session, how many watched it online, how many watched it on demand late, how many watched it in real time, how many people were in their seats. And that's going to help us be more thoughtful about putting together the programming. We're also mindful that everyone can't get to all the sessions, particularly in a city like San Diego, where the convention center is quite long, and to literally get from one end of the convention center to the other may cause you to miss part of a session. So what will likely be, and you can't quote me on this just yet because we're working on it, but you can almost quote me on it, is that we're going to have fewer live streamed sessions for this coming clinical Congress, but we'll have more on-demand sessions. So the live streaming was actually not used that much. I mean, things like convocation and opening ceremony will still be live streamed, but the rank and file individual who participated in clinical Congress online did not necessarily watch those sessions in real time. They did, however, want to be able to watch them sort of that day. And those of us who were at the meeting who might have missed something, like being able to get back to our hotel rooms and watch them in the evenings. So there will probably be a turnaround somewhere in the order of 4 hours-ish, so that if you want to watch a session that happened that morning, you should be able to catch it in the afternoon. If you want to catch a session in the afternoon, you should be able to watch it after dinner. And that will help address some of the issues about the fact that clinical Congress done literally both in real time, online live streaming, and in person is about twice as expensive as a meeting. As I'm sure all of you know, I'm here at a meeting, what the expense is when you try to live stream everything. And so our goal is to get as much of that content available to you for as long as possible. So up until May or so, and just do give us that feedback. We want to know what you think about these innovative changes we're making. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we've all been in this situation where you're trying to pick which session to go to. And that's been the overwhelming response that we've had, is that this has been a wonderful opportunity to catch two things that are going on at the same time and use that asynchronous learning. It also expands the number of CME hours that are available to you immensely, to where every single session is available. So this is, it worked very well this past year, and we're looking forward to more modifications and refinement of that process.
And just on that point, you can get CME credit twice for something that you watched online, just so you're aware. I think people know that, but I'll say it again. You're allowed legitimately by the rules of the ACCME to watch something, and then perhaps you have questions. Perhaps you didn't get all the first time. You can watch it again, ostensibly to gain greater knowledge, and you can claim CME credits for both of the times that you watched it. So that is something that I did not know until we started talking about live streaming and people accessing online. Obviously, you can't get credit twice for something that happened in real time, but you can get credit for something that you saw in real time and then you watched again online to gain additional knowledge, or something that you watched online and then you watched it again to gain additional knowledge. And you can also speed it up. So for those of you like me who never listen to anything in real time, you can listen to it at double time and you can get through the sessions and get all of the content, all of the education, but in a quicker fashion. Seeing no one else at the microphone, thank you so much for your attention. We appreciate it, and we'll be around to answer any questions you might have.